Happy Lammas! Do you know what Lammas is? Well, you might have heard the word before if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. You might remember that they used to eat Lammas bread. Well, that's not what I'm celebrating today. Today I'm celebrating Lammas, which in the Wheel of the Year is the first harvest festival. And if you want to know more about it, what it is, what happened with it in history, how it was celebrated, and how you can work with your own personal development to connect with this time of the year, then keep on watching. Hello to you and happy Lammas. My name is Emma Jane. I'm a life coach, author and spiritual guide, and today is the festival of Lammas. Now, if you don't know what that is, if you look at the Wheel of the Year, it's the Celtic and Nordic festival of the first harvest. And this is something we used to be really connected with. If you go back maybe 3 generations, your family might actually know what this is if you live in Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, because this was a festival that has been celebrated since time began, well, at least since we were farmers. Lammas is the time of the first harvest. It's when the corn first gets to be cut down and when we start to gather the fruits of our labour. And this was celebrated throughout history. So in this video, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the symbology of Lammas. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of Lammas and how it was celebrated back in the day. And also I'm going to give you a few ideas of how you can connect with this time of the year with your personal development, and you can start to have a look at your goals and what your first harvest is. Let's dive in. Lammas is the first harvest festival, and it has lots of different symbology connected with it. If you have a look at the Wheel of the Year, what's really interesting about Lammas is it's the first of the harvest festivals. And what I mean by that is if you have a look at Imbolc, Ostara and Beltane, these are the 3 fertility festivals in the Wheel of the Year. And then if you have a look at Lammas, Mabon and Samhain, these are the 3 harvest festivals of the year. And of course, Lammas is all about the harvest of the corn that's going to get transformed into our beer and our bread. Now, we're very disconnected from that today because if we need a loaf of bread, we just go down to the shop and we pick it up. But when our ancestors were surviving on the crops that were brought in at Lammas, of course, we had a much stronger connection to this time of year. And realistically, it's only the trips and trappings of modern day life that make it so easy for us. This time of year is still really important. Now, the symbology of Lammas is, of course, around the harvest, but it's also around the themes of sacrifice, rebirth and transformation. And you see that in the story of the corn where it's cut down or sacrificed and transformed through baking or turning it into beer into something new, so it's reborn. So there's a lot of different symbology happening at this time of the year, and it's based on the way that our ancestors, or our Celtic and Nordic ancestors at least, believed this time of year represented. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. First of all, it's important to notice that Lammas is the 4th and last of the Celtic fire festivals throughout the wheel. So you have Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane and Lammas, and these 4 are all fire festivals. So obviously Lammas was celebrated with fires, but it's not the only way it was celebrated. Now, if you go to ancient Ireland, Lammas wasn't called Lammas, it was called Lunasa. And these 2 words, if you split it up into Lu and Nasa, Lu means games and Nasa means assembly. And one of the big traditions at the 2nd of August, or around this time of year when the first harvest started, was to hold games. And this was thought to come from the tradition of Lu holding games, funeral games, in honour of his mother when she passed away and they were burying her. And there were so many people that would come from all around the land to collect for these games, and they actually went on for 2 weeks, and it was where they would do spear throwing and running races. So it's very similar to the Olympic Games that we hold in the summer every year. And there was even a connection to water, because at Beltane, you remember the cattle were driven through the fire to purify them. Well, at Lammas, they used to drive the horses through water instead to purify them. So Lammas has this fire and water equal opposite connection to it as well. And there is the theme of sacrifice. And there were celebrations we know of where they had sacrificial kings represented. And sometimes they used to actually have a real king that was crowned a king for the year and then sacrificed and his blood spread on the land to signify a good harvest and to signify fertility coming again, because obviously survival was connected to the crops. Lammas or Lunasa was such an important festival. We know that it was celebrated across the British Isles. So it was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, and in the Isle of Man. And many of these places had the celebration games, or it was a celebration of community. And this is one of the really important things about Lammas and the themes of Lammas, is that it's community coming together. Because of course you can't have one man trying to bring in the harvest or one woman trying to bring in the harvest. Everybody had to get together so that they could bring the harvest in quickly and safely. So it was a very important time of people gathering. One of the ways we know our ancestors celebrated Lammas was to make bread out of the first grain cut from the harvest. And also they would take a little piece of the harvest corn and they would weave it into corn dollies and put these over the hearth in the home to keep the harvest growing, to keep the fertility going, so that they would have a good harvest again the next year. And then at the next Lammas, that corn dolly would be burnt and a new one would be made as well. So the word Lammas comes from Anglo-Saxon and it literally means loaf mass. And on that day, what they would do in Anglo-Saxon England is they would make bread from the very first harvest, the grain harvested, and take it to church to be blessed. And then they would take that bread and split it into 4. And at the corners of the barn where the grain was going to be stored throughout the winter, they'd put the bread at each side in order to bless the harvest, that it would keep, that it would sustain them and keep them through the winter. The other thing about Lammas was that in Ireland, they actually believed that it was really, really bad luck to cut your grain before the harvest. Now, today we start to do a little bit earlier, and I'm sure where you live in the world, we have a different time for doing that. But it's interesting to see the superstitions that were built around this time, and it was all about survival. It was part of giving thanks, of giving gratitude, and signifying what an important part of life actually being able to take food from the ground is. And I think that's something that we've lost a little bit today in life. So have a think about Lammas and have a think about how lucky you are when you're eating your dinner tonight after watching this video, your lunch, whatever time of day it is, that you're actually able to have that food on the table, because our ancestors sure as heck would have appreciated it. So what I like to do, the way that I practice my seasonal spirituality, is to take the symbology or the themes that of how our ancestors celebrated Lammas or celebrated the festivals, and transfer these to personal growth practices that I can use today. So sort of modernizing the tradition, so to speak. So if you think about the themes of Lammas, you have the first harvest, you have sacrifice, you have community, and then you have rebirth. So let's have a look at those and how you can align your personal growth with these Lammas themes. So the main theme at Lammas is the first harvest. Now, it's really, the main theme at Lammas is the first harvest. And if you, like me, work with personal goals, this is a fantastic opportunity for you to check in with your goals, because we started them at the beginning of the year and now we're at the midway point. Lammas is celebrated around about the 2nd of August. So it's either at the end of your summer holidays or the beginning of the summer holidays, depending on where you live in the world. And this is a great time for you to stop and check in with your progress. So what I recommend you do is have a look through the last 6 months, have a look to see how you've been going, or if like me you work with the Wheel of the Year, go all the way back to Samhain and have a look at that and start to find out, what is your harvest? What have you harvested so far? What things have you brought into your life? What have you manifested from the work that you've put in, the goals you set yourself? Again, if you work with them in bulk, you can already see the goals that you've been setting in bulk have started to manifest in your life now. Now, I'm not saying that these goals are completely finished, because maybe you have, maybe you've got your goals done in 6 months and you're going to have to make new ones. But ideally, it's the checking in with the progress and seeing where you're at. So have a look at what is your first harvest this year. So the next theme of Lammas is sacrifice, and that's something we all have to do. If we want to create change in our life, if we want to achieve goals, if we want to move forward in our lives, we do have to let stuff go. And you'll have been doing that when you look at your goal process this year or throughout your journey, because when the year started in January or October, depending on when your new year starts, you will have sacrificed something. And it's really good to look back and see what you've given up, what you've had to let go, and how it's helped you come forward. So I do this again by going through my goals and having a look at what I've sacrificed. And it can be small sacrifices like the blood, sweat and tears of creating a vegetable garden, which is what I'm working on this year. You know, I've had quite a few mozzies eating away at me while I've been doing it, and quite a few failures that have forced me to give up on ideas that I had and concentrate on the things that are working. So looking at your sacrifice is a really good way of getting you focused on the things that you want to manifest. And that's what I think these fertility and harvest festivals are all about, is really looking at how we can manifest and grow things in our lives. Another thing you can do is check in with your goals from the beginning of the year and look at which ones you're not going to continue with, because you know, when we go into in-bulk energy or January energy, whenever you set your goals for the year, we get so inspired and over-optimistic about what we can actually do. Now you're at the midpoint of the year, or you're going towards the end of the wheel, depending on how you work with it. There are going to be some things that you're going to have to drop for now. Or there may be things that you need to drop in your life in order to manifest these goals. So have a look and make a really conscious choice about what you're going to sacrifice so that you can manifest other things in your life later in the wheel. And of course, as I said before, community is a huge symbol or theme at this time of year, because you can't bring in a harvest without other people. Now, we're all lucky enough to have a community in our lives, be it our friends, family, loved ones, colleagues, members of a sports club, but there are people in your life that support you. And I would recommend at Lammas that you maybe get together and have a harvest feast, have a community feast where you can spend some time appreciating the community that you're in. Also, if you are working on your goals and you're struggling with these, Lammas is a great time to reach out to your community and ask for help, and you can do that in the form of being an accountability partner. And I have a video that I'm coming up later on that talks about how you can be a good accountability partner. So once I've made it, I'll put the link down below for you guys. So reach out to your community and celebrate your community at Lammas. Transformation and rebirth are the other themes of Lammas, and we've all transformed in our lives. You're not the same person that you were 6 days ago, 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago. You've transformed, and I think it's a really good idea to check in with that transformation, not just to see where we've been, but also to see that we can create change in our life and to look at where we're going to do. Now, one of the ways I love to do this, because I'm a very creative person, I like make and do, is I draw a picture of myself. It doesn't have to be a really good one, it can be a stick figure, in the center of a piece of paper. And I start with writing statements around the outside about who I was. Now, these can be positive statements, they can be negative statements. This is about where you were, and you can have a look back in the last wheel or in the last 5 years, wherever you want to start from. So you sort of write these sentences round until you can't think of anything else. Then you have a look at the now, the present, where you are in your life right now, and you start to write the next layer of the circle, which is I am statements. So I am blah. Whatever you do, whatever you feel, I am strong, I am powerful, I am a teacher. You know, move those things around. You know, you could be a wife or a husband now. So just start writing those again until you can't write any more statements about who you are right now. The last circle is I will be, and this is where you're looking at what you'd like to, where you'd like to transform, how you'd like to transform from the person you are now, maybe in the next 6 months, maybe in the next year. And you do that with sentences that start I will be. So you're looking at the entire journey of where you were, where you are, and where you're going to be going to. Now, when it comes to harvest, the other practice that I cannot recommend strongly enough for you to start to do at Lammas is practicing gratitude. And I've got a whole attitude of gratitude video that I'll put the link down to below so you can have a look at different ways of doing that. But I like to start each day with writing down 3 things that I'm happy and grateful for. Or it can just be 3 things I'm happy for, but it's about looking at those things and appreciate them. I don't think we do this enough in life, and your life really does become enriched because you do that practice. So if nothing else, on Lammas Day, write a list of what you're grateful for, and you'd be surprised to see how many things there are. If you'd like to know more about seasonal spirituality, Celtic and Nordic spirituality, and how you can combine your personal development with the Celtic and Nordic seasonal festivals and reconnect with nature, then you're very welcome to buy my book, Walking the Wheel of the Year. This is basically a guidebook of how you can connect with the festivals and how you can take themes that our ancestors and beliefs from our ancestors and convert them so they fit our modern lives, and how you can grow spiritually and how you can develop personally with nature. It's available on Amazon and it's also available on Book Depository. And I have a little bit of good news for you, because as some of you know, I teach Walking the Wheel of the Year in Denmark, but it hasn't been available outside of Denmark before. And this year I am starting the Walking the Wheel of the Year personal development program online. So as soon as I've got that set up, I will put a link down below and you can check that out, because then you can start to really bring the seasons of nature and the rhythm of nature in your life. Take care of yourselves, my loves. I hope you have a wonderful Lammas. And don't forget, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, the most important thing in life is to enjoy your journey.